It's looking like it's over, guys. It is looking like it is over. It is officially March 10th, the deadline for the WNBA CBA agreement that the owners laid out, the drop dead date that Adam Silver gave, and there's no deal done. And it appears that it is over for Caitlin Clark's 2026 WNBA season. We got to break this thing down, man.
March 10th, 2025, the deadline just passed, and there's no deal. After months of public negotiations, leaked letters, and internal chaos, the WNBA Players Association and the league couldn't get it done, which means Caitlin Clark's 2026 season is now officially in jeopardy. The most marketable player in women's basketball history might not play next year because the people who profit off her can't agree on how to split the money she's generating.
Been a bunch of public banter back and forth, trying to win over public perception, trying to make the other one look bad. I think there's been blunders on both sides, especially with the WNBPA. They're trying to downplay this letter that came out from Kelsey Plum and Breanna Stewart that makes the higher ups in the PA look absolutely awful, in Terry Carmichael Jackson and Nneka Ogwumike. And with all of that being said, as they've continued to negotiate these past couple of days,
this has been a disaster from the start. Public banter back and forth, each side trying to win over fans instead of negotiating in good faith. The WNBPA tried to paint themselves as united warriors fighting for fair compensation. But then on March 3rd, ESPN obtained a private letter from Kelsey Plum and Breanna Stewart that exposed the truth. Two executive committee members raising serious concerns about Union President Nneka Ogwumike and Director Terry Carmichael Jackson. Specifically, they cited a lack of player involvement and communication breakdowns. That's not unity. That's a fractured negotiating team that couldn't even keep its own leadership aligned.
Have come and gone as negotiations between the league and players have stretched across months, but none are more important than Tuesday. Okay? Here it says the league said that Tuesday, March 10th, is the date a term sheet for a new CBA must be completed in order to avoid a delay in the start of the 2026 season, which is scheduled to tip off May 8th. There's been movement from both sides as the deadline approached, as the WNBA and WNBPA swapped counter proposals over the weekend. But as of Tuesday morning, there's no deal. There's no deal, y'all. Let's
look at where we are right now. No deal done. The league set this deadline for a specific reason. May 8th, 2026 is when the season is scheduled to tip off. To make that happen, they need a term sheet completed by today to handle arena bookings, broadcast schedules, sponsorship agreements, and player contracts. All of that infrastructure requires months of lead time. Miss this deadline, and the entire 2026 season gets delayed or potentially canceled. And here's what makes this particularly frustrating. Both sides have been exchanging proposals. The WNBA submitted a counteroffer on March 1st, responding to the players' February 27th submission. Then the union sent another proposal back on March 6th. The league countered again on March 7th. They've been at the table. They've been negotiating, but they stopped releasing details publicly, which means we don't know exactly where the sticking points are anymore.
So to speak, yet we're still here with no deal. We're still here. Caitlin Clark is still waiting around. She said y'all need to get in the room and lock in for hours, whatever needs to get done. And we are here at the deadline, and it's still not done. Okay. Here it says, let's get into this. WNBA recent CBA negotiations. Where do things stand? The WNBA submitted a counter proposal to the Players Union on March 1st in response to the WNBPA's February 27th submission. WNBPA Executive Committee.
What we do know is where this negotiation started. The players initially demanded 30% revenue share. That number came down to 27.5%, then eventually dropped to around 26.5%. Each concession revealing that the original ask was unrealistic from the beginning, and that's been the pattern throughout these talks. The WNBAPA starts with an aggressive position, the league pushes back with reality, and then we get incremental movement that should have happened months ago. Kelsey Plum called the league's March 1st offer a significant win, but other players immediately slammed that same proposal publicly. Lexi Brown defended the union leadership, claiming everyone had access to Nneka Ogwumike whenever they needed information. Except that directly contradicts what Plum and Stewart wrote in their letter. They specifically stated they couldn't get information they'd been requesting for an extended period. They didn't see a full proposal until January. That's not effective communication from leadership managing the most important negotiation in WNBA history.
They wrote the letter because there was a lack of communication and information that they felt they were receiving. They did not see a proposal until the January proposal. That's ridiculous. Okay. Here it says, Stewart said the executive committee met after the letter leak, which led to a little bit of a tougher call Tuesday night that ultimately got the executive committee back on track. So they weren't on the same page. All of these things just go to confirm that they were not on the same page. And part of that is probably why we still don't have a deal today. Let's be real here.
And then the WNBAPA released that statement on March 4th. Instead of acknowledging any internal issues, they blamed the league for trying to divide the players. In every CBA negotiation, the goal of the league and teams is to divide the players. These negotiations are no different. That's a convenient deflection when your own executive committee members are writing letters expressing concern about your leadership. The statement also said the league's proposal wasn't worth taking, but here's the problem with that position. Multiple players have said anonymously to ESPN that they can't afford a lockout. Some called the union's approach greedy and selfish. Those aren't management plans. Those are actual WNBA players watching this negotiation drag on while their financial security hangs in the balance.
Here it says on March 4th, WNBPA Executive Committee released a statement publicly backing the negotiating team of its executive director, Terry Jackson, and Players Union President Nneka Ogwumike. In every CBA negotiation, the goal of the league and teams is to divide the players. The negotiations are no different. We remain united and focused on delivering a transformational CBA for all members of the union and are committed to negotiating for as long as it takes. Okay, so they went and blamed the WNBA and said they are trying to turn everybody against each other. But the fact of the matter is you guys weren't communicating.
There was a virtual meeting on February 23rd with more than 50 WNBAPA players, the entire executive committee, league staff, the labor relations committee, and team owners. That's the kind of comprehensive discussion that should have been happening from day one. Instead, it took until late February to get everyone in the same virtual room. And even after that meeting, even after the March 5th session that was supposedly more productive, even after proposals flying back and forth over the weekend, we're still sitting here with no deal. The March 10th deadline wasn't arbitrary. Commissioner Adam Silver made it clear this was the drop-dead date to preserve the 2026 season timeline. The league gave that warning with enough advance notice for serious negotiations to happen, and the Players Association committed publicly to negotiating for as long as it takes. Except, as long as it takes apparently didn't include meeting the one deadline that actually mattered.
Be playing as of right now in a 2026 WNBA season as it appears. They have missed the deadline. No deal is done. Get down in the comments and let me know what you guys think, man.
So here's what this really comes down to. Everyone involved in these negotiations wants to capitalize on the Caitlin Clark era. The league wants to maximize revenue from the massive audience she brought to women's basketball. The players want their share of that revenue, which is completely fair. Veteran players like Angel McCoughtry have been open about wanting to cash in before their careers end. That's honest and understandable. But somewhere in all of this positioning and posturing and public relations warfare, they lost sight of the actual goal. Getting a deal done that works for everyone while the WNBA is experiencing unprecedented growth. Instead, we got months of dysfunction. A union leadership team that couldn't keep its own executive committee informed. A negotiating process that played out in press releases and leaked letters instead of in the room where it should have stayed private. And proposals that started so far apart that even after multiple concessions, they still couldn't bridge the gap by the deadline that everyone knew was coming. Caitlin Clark said it herself. Get in the room and lock in for hours. Do whatever it takes to get this done. That was the message from the player who's driving this entire financial boom. And they still couldn't deliver. Not because the issues are impossibly complex. Professional sports leagues negotiate CBAs all the time. The NBA just went through this process. The structure exists, the frameworks are proven, the models are there to follow. They couldn't deliver because both sides got caught up in winning the public perception battle instead of winning the actual negotiation. The WNBA wanted to look generous while protecting their financial model. The WNBPA wanted to look strong and unified while internal divisions were already forming. And in the middle of all that performance, the substance got lost. Now we're looking at a delayed or canceled 2026 season. Caitlin Clark's sophomore year potentially wiped out. The momentum from the 2025 season completely stalled. Sponsorship deals that were negotiated based on a full season schedule now in limbo. Broadcast partners who paid for games that might not happen. Fans who were planning to buy tickets and merchandise and league pass subscriptions suddenly uncertain if there's going to be a product to consume. And for what? Because the Players Association started at 30% revenue share when they should have opened at a realistic number? Because the league played hardball on a deadline instead of extending negotiations another week? Because Aneka Ogwumike and Terry Carmichael Jackson couldn't keep Kelsey Plum and Brianna Stewart in the loop on basic proposal details? The financial stakes here are real. WNBA players deserve fair compensation. The revenue growth has been substantial, and the players generating that revenue should benefit from it. But fair compensation requires a functioning league. It requires games being played, tickets being sold, broadcasts happening on schedule. None of that occurs if you blow past the deadline and throw the entire 2026 season into chaos. This is the same pattern we've seen in other sports labor disputes. Both sides convince themselves that the other will blink first. Both sides believe their position is righteous and justified. Both sides think the public will support them when the shutdown happens. And then the shutdown actually happens and everyone loses. Players lose paychecks, teams lose revenue, fans lose interest, momentum evaporates. The WNBA was finally breaking through. Record ratings, sold-out arenas, mainstream media coverage, major sponsorship deals, expansion teams being announced, everything was trending in the right direction for the first time in league history. And this negotiation had the potential to cement that progress with a CBA that reflected the new reality of women's professional basketball. Instead, we get this: a missed deadline, an uncertain future, and a league that was riding the highest wave it's ever experienced now facing the possibility of no 2026 season. All because the people who benefit most from Caitlin Clark's popularity couldn't agree on how to split the profits she's generating. So where does this go from here? The league says the May 8th start date is now in jeopardy. That's diplomatic language for we're probably looking at a delayed season at minimum. The Players Association says they're committed to negotiating as long as it takes. But that commitment rings hollow when they just missed the deadline that would have prevented this entire crisis. Someone has to blink. Someone has to make the concession that gets this deal across the finish line. Because every day that passes without an agreement is another day of lost momentum, canceled plans, and frustrated fans who are finally paying attention to the WNBA. The question is whether anyone involved in these negotiations understands that the window doesn't stay open forever. Caitlin Clark's drawing power is real right now, but it requires her actually playing basketball. And if there's no 2026 season, if casual fans who just discovered the WNBA last year suddenly have nothing to watch, that audience might not come back when the league finally gets its act together. This should have been the easiest CBA negotiation in WNBA history. Revenue is up, interest is up, the future looks brighter than ever. All they had to do was agree on a split that reflected that growth while keeping the league financially stable. Instead, we're sitting here on March 10th with no deal, no clear path forward, and Caitlin Clark's 2026 season hanging in the balance because the adults in the room couldn't figure out how to share the profits from her success. Who's at fault here? The players for starting with unrealistic demands? The league for drawing a hard line on the deadline? The union leadership for failing to keep their own executive committee aligned? All of the above? Drop your take in the comments because this situation is far from over and the blame is going to get distributed real fast once fans realize there might not be WNBA basketball next year.